to help!
Is that the cry of a citizen in danger? This looks like a job for... Super Quantum! What seems to be the problem, citizen?
Oh, thank God you're here, Super Quantum! I got my balls stuck in the dishwasher, and then when I went to try and open it, the latch was broken, so I had to try to pry it out using a spatula. But when I went to get the spatula, it got lodged in my asshole! So then I had to use a phone to call for help, but instead of phoning help, I accidentally sent a picture of the whole ordeal to my high school crush! Help me!
You need an ambulance. Or like therapy. I just do math. I'm gonna go calculate how much money you're gonna need to spend on therapy co-payments.
Good afternoon, Jank enthusiasts. I'm MBT, and this is 10-Minute Testing. After a court-ordered series of profiles describing meta decks, I'm very happy to report that I have finally fulfilled my community service obligations, and my parole officer is once again allowing me to make janky profiles of terrible decks. On a, unrelated note, here's Super Quantums.
Go team, go try!
So here's the list, and it's perfect! It's so simple, so clean, and yet it contains multitudes. Who would guess a deck this unassuming is the next Tier 0 meta threat? As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, I've done one of these shoutouts before, so this isn't information for long-term viewers, but I'm happy to once again be working with your playmat. For the longest time, there just wasn't any way to get your image printed on card sleeves. Well, your playmat has filled that niche, alongside, big surprise here, playmats. They are a really nice quality. I've been using them for months, and they still feel as fresh as the day I bought them, and you can get a sick discount on your art using my code that's on screen right now. If you don't know what you'd like on them, you can always use the channel art, which is available on their store. So with that, let's slide into Super Quantum. Super Quants are a series of monsters the wiki claims are based on Super Sentai, but Konami, this is the 12th archetype in a row you've claimed is based on Super Sentai. Each of the Quantums is a different type and attribute from each other, and each one has an effect that triggers both when it's normal or special summoned, and when it's sent to the graveyard. Each also has a corresponding Xyz monster with an effect that's powerful, but only a quick effect if it's piloted by the correct monster. Finally, their field spell, Magna Carrier, allows them to combine into their ultimate form, Super Quantal Mech King Great Magnus. This pinnacle of Xyz engineering has 3 effects. If he's got 2 mats, he's a non-targeting quick effect to spin. If he's got 4 mats, he's unaffected by card effects. And if he's got 6 mats, he's Colossus. Think of him like a Hazy Flame Basiltris, except this card might actually win us some games. Super Quantum is unique in that they're an archetype where almost every individual card has been playable at some point, but almost never for the reasons that Konami intended. Sure, there were 2 or 3 tops back in March of 2016, and the ABC scholar himself, Calvin, won an ARGCS with Quants back when no one understood what they did, but by and large, the legacy of these laser lads has been their utility in other decks. Blue Layer, for instance, is a level 3 psychic monster and was played in Monarch decks for return reasons alongside Emergency Teleport to search Red Layer, making a 1-card tribute summoned monster. Some extremely greedy builds of this also played Magna Carrier. Super Quantum Red Layer is a warrior-type monster that can be special summoned for free, making him a mainstay in all manner of I Sold combo decks, and his fire typing meant that when Infernoble rolled around, he was all the better for Fire Flint Lady setups. And finally, Grampulse was a staple in any deck that could make a rank 3 for almost half a decade as the most functional spell trap removal they had available. Anyway, all of this begs the question, Joseph, why do you give a shit? The Quants have been out for so long that there's videos of Blade saying the new support sucks from before he hit puberty.
However, after reading the cards, I was turned out to be quite disappointed.
Well, a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's one of the decks making use of one of the most poorly designed cards in modern memory, Diviner of the Heralds, to pretty wild success. I mean, we've known this card is capable of some nonsense for a while, but you're gonna lose your mind at the flavor of this ridiculousness. Secondly, it's, doing okay. I mean, certainly online tournaments aren't indicative of actual tournament success, but Cursed Eyes has been on a tear both in the Chalice Line Monthly and Pepega Tintin's online tournaments, with a list similar to this one. And thirdly, listen, That last 10-minute testing took a lot out of me spiritually. I need a palate cleanser. Just let me make the big robot with the huge sword in peace, please. So with that, it's time to get into the card by card. Oh boy. This is going to be a hard one, both to record and for you to listen to. These are long cards with tons of text that are very complicated. But every second I spend describing them is another second towards mid-roll ads. Enjoy the breaks! First, we've got our Super Quants. 3 white layer. This card can be summoned by sending a non-light Super Quant from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard. When it's special summoned, you can send a Super Quant monster from your deck to the graveyard. Its attribute and level becomes the same as that of the sent monsters. And if it's sent to the graveyard, you get to recycle an Alfan from your deck or grave. Next up is red layer. You know this card because it's a free special if you control no monsters. When it's special, you can target a Super Quant in your graveyard, then add it to your hand. And if it's sent to the graveyard, you can target a Super Quant monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but you can't activate its effects. I bet you didn't know this card was busted, huh? Next up is 2 copies of green layer. This is in here for particular Alfan setups and because you do want all 4 names so that you can consistently make the Great King, but he's not particularly good. When he's normal or special, you can special a Super Quant monster from your hand, and if he's sent to the graveyard, you can cycle one. Blue layer is the heart and soul of the deck, and the reason we're playing green is because sometimes you draw blue. When it's normal or special, you add a Super Quant from your deck to your hand, and if it's sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle 3 Super Quants in your graveyard back into the deck. You don't draw a card, like you would expect to, but you can use this effect to chain block. Massively important. And finally, Super Quantal Fairy Alpha. Now, this is not a Super Quantum monster, it's a Quantal. Once per turn, you can target a Super Quant you control, and all face-up monsters you control become that monster's level. Very important with early Triss setups. And you can tribute this card to reveal 3 Super Quants with different names, and then randomly summon one of them. It's not ideal, but you do what you have to. Oftentimes, you're sending a white, a red, and either a green or a blue, depending on what your hand or graveyard look like, respectively. Next, we've got our starter, 3 Diviner of the Heralds. Shocking, right? This card isn't sending Drytrons. It is instead sending Trias Hierarchica, which can be special summoned from the graveyard by tributing any number of fairy monsters. If Diviner is tributed, you can use its effect to summon a level 2 or lower fairy monster from your hand or deck, and what do you know? Alfan just happens to be a fairy. It's a long setup just to enable a normal summon of this card. Finally, because we're on so many fairies, we're also on 3 Herald of Orange Light, you really can't get your Alfan negated. For spells, we're on 3 copies of Super Quantal Mech Ship Magna Carrier. This card does everything. You can discard a card not once per turn, then target a Super Quantum monster you control, special a Super Quantal Mech Beast that corresponds to the color of the card from your extra deck on top of it. Then, you can send this card to the graveyard, special summon Super Quantal Mech King Great Magnus from your extra deck by targeting 3 Super Quantal Mech Beast Xyz monsters with different names you control or have in your graveyard, and then attach those monsters and their material to Magnus as material. This is how you are winning the game, and very important that you see this, usually off of blue layer's effect. Because you have to pitch cards to activate it, we're playing a lot of cards that draw 2 cards. 3 triple tactical talents, this card is fantastic for every single one of its modes, and Pot of Desires. We're then playing a bunch of really bannable one-ofs, Terraforming, Foolish Burial, Monster Reborn, Called by the Grave, Emergency Teleport, and 1-for-1, followed by 3 Infinite Impermanents, and a free Win City. In the extra, we're on Super Quantal Mech King Great Magnus. Because we're only playing 1 copy, you will be shuffling it back with blue pretty frequently. This card is absolutely everything you need it to be. We're also playing a Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder. We usually end up with random Super Quants on our side of the field. Why not turn them into board wipes? 2 Lustrex, 2 Magnaliner, 1 Ouroboros, and 2 Grampulse. It gets kind of crusty if you're only playing with 1 apiece. We're playing 1 Ouroboros because it comes up a little more infrequently. Finally, we're on 1 Lyrilisc Assembled Nightingale. This isn't that hard to make, and oftentimes you find your back against the wall. For links, we're on Access Code Talker for obvious reasons. Infinitrack Fortress Megaclops because when Grampulse goes to the graveyard, usually your opponent has exhausted their entire resource base in order to get it off the field, and you are left with a bunch of useless mech beasts. You can turn them into a Megaclops and keep the gravy train rolling. We've also got Nightmare Unicorn, Masquerena, and Linkaribo, both for laddering to access code and for disruption. So, all in all, super excited to try this out. I'll see you in the games. Our first match is up against Burning Abyss, and our opponent's build is just a little bit spicy. This hand showcases our bread and butter combo. It is what you're going to be doing most of the time, and we have drawn exceptionally well. We're going to begin with a copy of Red Layer, and then follow it up with a normal summon to Diviner of the Herald, sending Trias Hierarchica, which can tribute a monster on your side of the field to special summon itself from the graveyard. Because the Diviner was tributed, we can then summon an Alfan from our deck. Alfan has 2 effects. The first modulates levels, important to get more material on Magnus for later in the combo. The second summons monsters from the deck. Now, this is a non-deterministic part of the combo. combo. You're always picking white, you're always picking blue, but your goal is to get blue into rotation, so you'll pick your third quantum based on what you have in your hand or your graveyard. We have a blue in hand, so we're going to go for green. From here, we'll go for Magna Carrier. We'll overlay for a Magna Liner the hard way before using Magna Carrier to make green, triggering the effect of red in order to get our white back, and then firing Magna Carrier again. We might as well also fire it for the white so we can keep a Luster Rex on our side of the field, and then we'll activate its effect in order to make a Great Magnus with 7 material. This means we'll be able to shut off our opponent's draw and also tuck a card they control. They're going to begin with a copy of Tour Guide. We probably should have just lustered this, given that it's probably Burning Abyss, but I thought it was just a starter because Cherubini is just so ubiquitous in so many decks. Once I see the Alec, I know that it's actually BA. We'll go ahead and fire off this Great King Magnus, and unfortunately they do have another one. They're going to trigger Alec, prompting an early activation of our Luster X. Unfortunately for us, this copy of Cherubini sends for cost, so it doesn't actually accomplish anything, but use it or lose it. They're going to activate the effect of Fiendish Rhino Warrior to send a Sky Scourge Norialis before monster reincarnating back so they can barber us for 9. What the hell is up here? They're going to special summon a copy of Farfa, then activate the last card in their hand, transmodify to go into Phantom of Chaos. Talk about history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Unfortunately, they can't activate the effect of Norialis, both because this Magnus isn't affected by card effects, and also because its mistake effect prevents our opponent from drawing cards. As a result, we're just going to style afterwards, going through the motions in order to get 2 copies of Luster X on our side of the field, just putting damage on board. Now, these Xyz monsters can't attack unless they have material, so as a result, we're going to have to activate the effect of Luster X to get an extra copy of White Layer underneath it. We'll go for the Magna Carrier for the other Luster and proceed to the battle phase. We'll attack over for 27, for 22, and for 36. So you've seen what happens when everything goes according to plan, but what happens when plans fail? Well, for game 2, our opponent's Magical Musketeer deck has divined 2 hand traps to their opener. Now, we can almost always play through 1 hand trap, and oftentimes play through 2 hand traps, unless one of those hand traps is, I don't know, something like, hypothetically, a Dimension Shifter. This deck does not do particularly well against turn enders, as you're about to see. Our opponent waits until the main phase to fire the Shifter. I actually really like this. You make your opponent commit to something before you macro. We'll go for a White Layer, and now everything else is going to be banished. They'll Ash our White Layer, and I actually go for the Triple Tactical Talents Sentry mode here. No reason to be drawing cards. Anything we do is just going to end up in the banished zone anyway, so let's go into a Luster X and pass turn. Now, the Luster X is to negate the effect of Max, except they drew the Caspar, so instead we have to Luster X to negate the effect of Caspar. They get the Harpy's Feather Duster off, and then they get to go into Max, adding a Death Barado to hand. That said, we do have a Monster Reborn in hand and an Alphan in graveyard. Provided our opponent's last card isn't exactly Ghost Spell, we should be good, and because we activated Triple Tack, we know what it is. Oh good, there's the third one. We'll go for a Monster Reborn here for Alphan. We'll activate the effect, and we get very lucky, admittedly, a blue layer off of this. We'll trigger the effect of Red Layer and the effect of White Layer. That's going to add an Alphan from deck to hand, and summon back the White Layer as well, although it can't activate its effects. From here, we'll go for the Field Spell, using its effect to overlay for a Luster X for the follow-up Max. Then we'll normal summon an Alphan. This is just a little bit cute. I want to make a 2-mat Grand Pulse, so when I make Zeus, it has 3 material. This way, if our opponent destroys one of our monsters with something like a Death Barado, it has to be Zeus, or else we're going to get 2 activations. They're going to go for Kid Brave and Max. We do have the Luster X for the Max. We'll go ahead and fire it off, negating its effect, and that's functionally the end of the game. We'll trigger the effect of White Layer. I can't believe this card is both a combo starter and the follow-up play. Alphan back to hand. You said it. Okay, we're BMing a little bit here, but unfortunately we do have to go through all of it. Because the Luster X can't attack because it doesn't have a quant attached, we're going to have to actually do the combo once again. We'll go for a Red Layer here and activate its effect in order to add back to the hand a White Layer. We'll activate the effect of White Layer, summon it, and then activate White Layer's effect and Red Layer's effect to bring back the White Layer and attack. Afterwards, we can activate the effect of the Field Spell in order to overlay for another Luster X and then start attacking. Okay, again, I promise I'm not BMing. You do unfortunately have to commit this hard. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's playing Drytron, and this is a little bit frustrating. Our deck does very well into archetypes that set up 1 or 2 pieces of interaction, even things that aren't necessarily negates. Most decks do that right now, with one huge exception, which is the deck we are sitting across the table from. We're going first at least, but this is one of the very few hands that doesn't actually produce the combo. It could if Alphan summons Blue Layer, but that's not a guarantee. We're going to go for Red Layer first, and then normal summon the Alphan, fire off the Alphan, and what do we find but a green layer, the worst possible outcome. Okay, we'll trigger the effect of the white layer in graveyard to get an alpha, and we'll go into a masquerade and then trigger the effect of the green layer and the red layer in order to draw a card and summon back the white. This is still a decent board, even if it doesn't look it. Our opponent's going to begin with a copy of Diviner. We're going to activate Infinite Impermanence here, and a worse player would just start jamming spells in the middle column. Burrito Man, what's going on? They'll go for a copy of Cyber Emergency instead, and followed up with Alpha tributing Ben 10. My god. Alright, they're going to add an orange light to hand here. That's interesting. They're going to go for a Zeta in order to get a Meteonis, and then overlay for a Mubeta Fafnir. They'll trigger that effect, and then we'll IP. This forces all of the monsters out of their hand and makes a potential ultimateness pretty dead. We're going to infip this copy of the Fafnir, so they have to send the entire thing to the graveyard to bring back this Ben 10. They go for the Gamma as well, and they add an ultimateness, but it doesn't actually do anything with no cards in the hand. They're going to go for Delta, tributing this copy of the ultimateness, and they draw a Red Eyes Fusion? Oh, that's kind of crusty. Okay, instead they're just going to overlay for a copy of Beatrice. They'll activate the effect of Beatrice in order to send an Ava. Then they'll activate Ava. The math on this just didn't work out for them. Instead, they're going to have to get over the white for 100. We get the Alpha and back. They'll get in for 500 and 1,000. And then in main phase 2, go Downward Zeus. Now, this is a very beatable board. It doesn't have any negates on it, though we do know that there is an orange light available in hand. So we're going to begin with a copy of Alpha, and we'll trigger the effect. They're going to let it resolve, thankfully. We'll go for red layer, sending blue and white. That blue layer is going to chain block against the orange light, so we don't have to worry about it, at least for this effect resolution. We're going to add an alpha into hand and then add back this white layer, which we will then activate. We'll trigger the effect of the white layer and the effect of the red layer in sequence, so we can summon back the green layer and use the white layer to send a green layer and potentially draw another card. We're going to go for Ouroboros here to force an early activation of the Zeus. Instead, our opponent takes the bait and goes for the orange light, which allows us to triple tack the Zeus, making them clear their own board. Now, unfortunately, we can't Zeus over their Zeus, because if we do, we are dead to any Drytron. Instead, we need a Zeus that can activate, so we will attack and then overlay our own Grampulse into a Zeus, giving our opponent their Zeus back. Triple tack is okay, but it's no miracle worker. Unfortunately for us, our opponent has the Red Eyes Fusion in hand, so they're just going to fire that, get a copy of Dragoon, and then we'll trigger the effect of the blue layer, hoping for a God draw off the top. They'll activate the effect of Dragoon. We are not dead here, though we are going to take all but 400 of our life points. In main phase 2, they'll fire off a pot of Duality. Let's find off the top a Nova. Okay, at least they can't really activate it here. They'll pass back to us. We draw probably the best card remaining in our deck, but it is not going to be enough. Well, that was heartbreaking. Well, our hand for game 2 looks pretty good. Our opponent's Ash Blossom won't even be able to stop us. We're going to begin with a copy of Green Layer. Green Layer is going to special summon a blue layer, and then we'll trigger the effect of blue layer for a red layer. From here, we're going to activate the field spell. We'll activate its effect in order to overlay for an Ouroboros, which we will send to the graveyard for white layer's effect. White layer's effect on field will trigger, and our opponent will Ash Blossom. That is smart, but is not enough. From here, we can activate Magna Carrier's effect in order to go into a Lustrex. Then, we can activate red layer's effect in graveyard to summon back the green, link summon a copy of Masquerena, and trigger white in order to get an alpha into hand. We'll activate Magna Carrier again for the blue, go into a Grampulse, and then activate Magna Carrier to make a 5-material Magnus. He's not as big as he could be, but he is unaffected by everything, and I feel like that's probably good enough. Our opponent's going to lead with a copy of Pot of Prosperity. No big deal, no big deal. Let's see what they find off the top. Okay, well, a Nova is fine. They're going to fire off the Nova to get a copy of Alpha to their side of the field, then Gamma the Alpha away to bring back the Alpha. That's no big deal. Even if they make Fafnir, nothing can attack over our Magnus, so I'm not particularly... What the fuck? Who is playing this? Okay, if we tuck back the Fafnir, the only thing that can possibly summon it is 2 Drytrons in hand. Holy guacamole, you've got to be kidding me. Oh, wait. Oh, God. Oh, wait. Oh, God. Okay, don't make fun of me, comments. Listen, I was so tilted, I forgot that DRA can attack every special summoned monster I control once each. Our opponent in main phase 2 is going to go for the Meteonis. They're going to go for an Alpha in order to get a copy of Ben 10 to hand. They'll go for the Zeta, and they're not comboing off in main phase 2, are they? Come on. Diviner in order to send a copy of Herald from their extra deck to the graveyard to get an Itaden, and... yeah, there's the Dragoon. It's got to be something unparalleled off the top to beat a Dragoon negate, and unfortunately, blue layer is strong, but not it. We'll go for the effect, they'll Dragoon, and I guess we might as well shuffle some cards back in before we concede. So, we're back with the deck, and wow! I'm kind of taken aback. Obviously, it's not crazy strong. The deck does have some glaring weaknesses, but I'm really surprised that it's as competent as it is. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1. Magnus is an extremely good card. You'd think that investing your entire hand into one big asshole would be game-losingly weak, but this isn't your average monster. Even if your opponent massively overboards into kaijus, sending this card to the graveyard summons about 15 additional monsters and triggers 40 quant effects. 2, its backup plans are really solid. Even ending on Grampulse Luster is pretty good, especially when your opponent is down a hand trap or 2. And 3, wow! Diviner is broken! Obviously, the really crazy card here is Alphan, but Diviner's a great way to get it out. And the cons. 1, it is very bad against multiple hand traps. In testing, you could pretty much always make a Magnus through 1 interruption, but 2 reduced your ceiling, and 3 functionally ended the game. 2, Orange Light sucks. You want to play Gamma in this slot, but that's only good with Alphan opens, so you're on this. I honestly think I might just cut it for Ash Blossom. And 3, this feels weird to say, but it's honestly slow at winning the game, because if your Magnus doesn't die, you're just sitting on him for a turn until your opponent does something about it, or you draw another starter. Decks these days can't be allowed to get another turn. I'm considering playing Gravity Controller so I can just proc it myself. All in all, this is a refreshing deck with a playstyle that hasn't been represented since Thunder Dragon was meta. Happy to have given it a shot. So that's that. As always, thanks to my patrons Dominic Ernst, Hakuo, AJBYGO, Alex Perea, BB Poison, Blue Fanfiction Inc., Brandon Green, Brian Rydell, GB Gohan, Colin Miller, Crispy, Ikaleba Brot, Jack Sack PhD, King Magic Ruler, Night Mary, Kylie Denton, Major Rusty, Mike Carlotti, Not Witty, Robot, Rocky Hernandez, Rose Lapine, Sarah Rutledge, Seeker, Sean Elling Jr., Space Condor, Space Dandy 1993, Test Subject 213, William Antonelli, Adam Trevino, Adrian Bra, Afro Ninja 123, Alex Dominguez, Alfred Hendricks, Amaranta V, Andrew Benson, Andrew Ferruia, Andrew Horseman, Apex TCG, Ballin Stalin, Based Madoka, Benjamin Cole Kierman, Billy Williams, Blackacre, Blake Root, Blair, Brandon Keys, Brandon Peterson, Breaker the Outrage, Brody Colson, Captain Breadbeard, Chad Bortz, Chad Weatherington, Chase Smith, Chorps Away, CJ Alex, Cole Schulian, Colin Gustafson, Control for the Win, Crystal Red Fox, Daffy Deathclock, Dan Schwer, Dan the Man Hoban, Danny Guadalupe, Darcy Tevs, Dive Missile, Dogma, Dr. Batman, Distrin, Eileen Sappho, LP got banned, Sag, Emily V, Emperor Stove, Ernesto Ibarra, Fighting Fangwong, Fisker Whiskers, FUTR, Game of Wolf, Gavin K, Hank Cheesecake, Helios the Helios, Haroof, How to Lose, Jose Mina, Incredibly Slow, Isaac Jackson, Jalen Ya, Jason Leonard, Jay Gordon, Jeff Leonard, Jesse Cox, Jonathan Wallace, Jupe, Jose Luis Cortez, Joy Orjon, Juliet Julian, Callie, Corey Hess, Goro Kaze, Lake Bayer, Lawrence, Leah Lisbeth, Lightsworn Gorgon, Lottie, Lovra Plesse, Lucas Engels, Lucas Geerdes, Lucas Arito Hansen, Major Duncan, Matthew Taylor, Max Meadow Edits, Merp, Mezzo Emrys, Michael Marks, Michael Oskvark, Miles Edgelord, Mimes Are Creepy, Miska Aronin, Miyuna Arashi, Nick Extreme 99, Niru Soup, Nitro Skull, Nix Dolores, Noom, Omase, One Glad Morning, Austerin, Par 2, Pizer, I hope I'm saying that right, Picnic Blasted, Precise Spike 13, Pro FB2, Raska, Riley Malo, Sam Pinney, Sapphic Ashley, Scrafted, Sean Deal, Sean Flynn, Second, Sandoria, Seraphine, Shy, SSJ Majin Slayer, Standards Objective, Swinkles, Tate Rosencutter, The Carl Moxley, The Saucy Pickle, This Machine 237, Thought Auditor, Violet Prison, Why Am I Here, Yordle Hu, Yuri's Best, and Yukie. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing, and if you want to be part of the process, consider following me on Twitch as well. See you next time.